Many professionals were never taught how to fully assess tongue tie, and families are often left trying to reach their breastfeeding goals without the support they actually need. If feeding feels harder than it should, I don't want you to be alone. I wrote Tongue Tie for Parents to help you understand what's happening and how to move forward with a clear, thoughtful approach. It's the same guidance I would give you if you were sitting with me in my office. It takes a holistic, functional view, guiding you through what to look for, how to think about next steps, and what actually helps. Available now on Amazon. Link is in the show notes. Welcome to the Tongue Tie Experts Podcast. I'm Lisa Palladino, a registered nurse, midwife, and lactation consultant with over 35 years of experience, and I'm grateful that you're listening today. This podcast is for families impacted by tongue and lip ties and for the professionals who care for them. Whether you're a parent looking for answers or a professional who knows there is more to learn than what many of us were taught in school, you are welcome here. I hope each episode helps you feel a little more informed, a little more grounded, and a little less alone. My own clinical work is centered on infants and breastfeeding, but these conversations often reach beyond infancy because function matters at every age. Together, we'll talk about tongue tie, lip tie, all stages of feeding, oral function, airway, and how we can support families with more clarity, confidence, and compassion. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to the Tongue Tie Experts Podcast. I'm Lisa. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Stephanie Culler. Stephanie Culler, PhD, is the co-founder and CEO of Persephone Biosciences, where she's pioneering microbiome-based medicines to transform human health. How exciting, right? She is the lead author of the My Baby Biome Study, the largest U.S. study to profile the infant gut microbiome, and her work spans applications from infant health to oncology. Stephanie earned her PhD from the California Institute of Technology and has authored more than 20 scientific publications and patents. Welcome, Stephanie. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the infant microbiome study is something that's always in the background of my mind. Like, this isn't, when you reached out to me, I felt like a celebrity called me, because I'm a geek. I'm a science geek. I'm a bio major originally. I loved science. I thought about research science before I decided to become a nurse. And, at the time, years and years ago, it didn't seem like there were as many opportunities for women in science as there are now, which is wonderful for now. And I went to the female-focused professions and picked nursing. But I am fascinated by science, and I feel like the microbiome is like the last frontier, really. I'm sure you agree.
Absolutely.
So what brought you to that? Like, how did you get from, getting your PhD? What was your PhD in?
So my PhD is in chemical engineering. However, I was developing cancer therapies, gene therapies. Became a scientist because I lost both my grandmothers to cancer when I was a young teenager. So it inspired this personal passion in cancer research, but also how to prevent disease. Mm-hmm. And in wanting to be an entrepreneur, everybody in my family is, but nobody's a scientist. After I got my PhD, I needed to learn how have a business, a biotech company. And so I got into industrial biotech, working with microbes, like what we have in our gut. Mm-hmm. And it was after success in that industry that I wanted to bring both my passions together. This passion for human health, oncology, preventing disease, but also with this deep, deep expertise in microbes, how they function, how to use the latest cutting edge technologies. And microbiome just seemed like a perfect fit for that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you found it, because we need this work more than I think we need any research in science, because this is the foundation of everything, right? Like, we are microbiomes. When I first
We're more microbes, yes, than us. Yes.
Right. There's more microbial cells than human cells. And when I first heard that years ago, it just like piqued my interest. And I was, trying to comprehend how that could be. And I mean, we could get really like woo-woo on this. To me, that connects us with the earth and, the world and where we come from and where we're going to, but that's another story. So what the heck am I bringing this microbiome scientist on the Tongue Tie Experts podcast? What's the reason for that? I have to make a connection, because we are always here looking at not just tongue tie, but what else can be affecting babies' health, right? And we blame tongue tie for a lot of things. That maybe it's not tongue tie, or maybe there's a tongue tie, but maybe something else is going on. So ruling out all of the things is important, and understanding what the basis of health is in general. So let's get into that, right? Talk to me about the breastfed baby, and if there's an altered microbiome or a missing piece in the microbiome, what might we be seeing in our babies?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is something modern babies are impacted. This is not something our grandparents or great-grandparents, the babies of the Amish, or the hunter and gatherer babies of today, these non-industrial populations. These are modern babies impacted by industrialization. So factors like antibiotics, C-section births, poor diet have impacted the kind of microbiome the child gets either at birth or very early on. And what that means is that the good bacteria that are supposed to be there, they're called bifidobacteria, that thrive in the presence of prebiotics in breast milk, those are now starting to be missing. And in its place are essentially inflammatory microbes. And those that cause inflammation and misguide the immune system development. And this is essentially permanent. And when a child has that, missing these key bacteria, their immune system develops errors. These errors can be linked to additional risk for getting disease conditions or atopic conditions like food allergies, eczema, asthma. We even think it's potentially connected to neurodevelopment and maybe even some cancers.
Because, I mean, we do know that all disease comes from inflammation, right? And cancer is the ultimate form of inflammation. I do share your family history of cancer. I often joke, it's not funny, but my mother's side, everybody died of cancer. My father's side, everybody died of heart disease. So I'm like, I wonder which way I'm going to go. But that's, I have a warped sense of humor. But anyway, prevention of cancer is important. Keeping ourselves optimally healthy from pregnancy, childbirth, and on. But I just want to stop and do a caution, or just say to people who felt like this feeling of, oh no, maybe I did something wrong, or what could I have done differently? Let's talk about the mommy guilt that we all have, or the parent guilt that we have. And, I have it myself. I wish I could go back to my own mother and say, please don't give me cow's milk at 3 months old because I reached a certain weight, which is what happened. Please give me a drop of your breast milk. But that never happened. And this carries on generation to generation to generation, correct?
Yep, absolutely. And that's what we're seeing in the infant gut. And I'm a mom too, and I have mom guilt. And I understand that it's nothing we as parents have done wrong. It is just a factor of the age that we're living in. We have amazing modern medicine, but sometimes there are things that are impacting us in ways that we never thought. And this is one area. But the good news is that we can change it. We can restore what's missing from these babies. Their microbiomes are plastic. They only have a few kinds of microbes at birth, and there's a lot of development in those toddler years. And so it's essentially a growing organ inside of our children. So we can have an impact. So we can change that. And that's the good news.
Do we know if we can change older children or adults in the same way? Do older people need the bifidobacter?
Older people still need bifidobacteria, and that's something that we found, across, all of microbiome scientists. Anytime we're investigating any disease that I know of, there's always one biomarker or one sign of that is actually low abundance of bifidobacteria. These key bacteria, not only in the infant gut, help reduce inflammation, but that's their role in adults. Their abundance should not be that high as it is in young children, but we still need it. And that's part of the problem, is that for moms or even family members, we don't have them anymore. And so we're actually not passing it on to the next generation.
Right. I have a couple of examples before I get to my next questions that I just want to talk about, because maybe other people can identify with these examples. I have a daughter who was my best breastfed daughter, right? Had all the things right, correct. I did everything I could. She was born vaginally at home. She was breastfed until she was 14 months old. She had, kind of like baby-led weaning. I was less like into the, baby food stage by the time I got to her. And also she never had antibiotics. She didn't have antibiotics, I think, until she was maybe 8 or 9. Like you did anything you would look back on her history, you would say, wow, that was ideal. However, she has an autoimmune disease, right? That was just diagnosed. And my first thought was, oh my goodness, I did everything right with her. But if I think back and realize that I was doing everything right with a child, but I didn't have the right foundation to pass it to her, which is kind of bizarre or sad or whatever, but at least it explains some things. It doesn't mean like, oh, I breastfeed, we don't need to breastfeed because it doesn't matter. No, that's not true. And I often tell her maybe she would have been sicker sooner or sicker now if she didn't have the baseline that she had, Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's really that kind of early stage in setting them for the rest of their lives, essentially. It's the biggest, as an engineer, I think of it as a set point. We're setting them up literally. So, but again, it's really modern technology that's able to assess this. We really didn't know, and we should be taking it for granted. But our research, the My Baby Biome Study, demonstrated that 9 out of 10 babies in the U.S. are missing one or more of these key bacteria.
9 out of 10. That's not a minor problem.
It's not a minor problem, right? And this impacts those that are vaginally born breastfed.
Right.
And there's multiple issues that are stemming from this. And we know by the time some of these children are 2 years old, at least what we've seen in our study and other global studies, is that low amounts or no amounts of these bacteria, which is really surprising. By age 2, they're at 3 to 4 times more at risk for getting eczema and food allergies and other chronic conditions. And we know, again, it's linked to many other things, but we're just starting to learn that. So, but these are recent findings. This is not something that we knew in the last 2 decades.
Right. Are you a healthcare professional working with breastfeeding infants? Wish you knew more about assessing and treating tongue ties? Earn continuing education credits and transform your practice with the Professional's Guide to Tongue Tie in the Breastfeeding Infant. It's perfect for any practitioner who works with infants and their mothers, especially those working through feeding challenges. learn to identify who needs treatment, build a qualified care team, and provide holistic care options. Discover the ins and outs of frenotomy, including procedure preparation and best aftercare practices. By the end, you'll be confidently supporting breastfeeding families armed with the latest protocols and be part of an interdisciplinary community of experts just like you. Tongue ties are nothing new, but the right way to assess and treat them is. Ready to make a real difference? Join now and become a tongue tie expert. Sign up today at tonguetieexperts.net/professional and become the evidence-based resource that your community needs. To show my gratitude, I'm offering you a special discount as a podcast listener. Use code PODCAST40 to save 40% off today. So, what can parents do to either in pregnancy or the breastfeeding, or if breastfeeding doesn't work, like what are our options to get bifidobacter back in our world? Where does it live in nature? Is it just in us? Is it in soil? Is it in animals? Like what?
Yeah. What? Bifidobacteria is in a variety of animals, but it really lives inside the gut. Okay. And these particular species that are associated for infants, as well as for us as we get older, are what we call anaerobes. They're very oxygen sensitive. And so little amounts of oxygen can really harm them. So their environment is normally in the gut, right? In this atmosphere that you and I are talking, that's not their environment. They're really these key residents. And in fact, we call them, they have a special name, keystone, because they're a foundational member of the ecosystem in our gut. And when a keystone disappears, just like wolves in the forest, the ecosystem tends to collapse. And that's kind of what we're seeing. The foundational, almost Lego building block of the child's gut is now missing, or, only partially there. And so that's kind of what we're seeing. And so how can parents address this? Well, we now know they're missing, right? We are learning what to do in pregnancy. There hasn't been any studies yet that have convincingly showed us how we can correct the mother's microbiome. That's something, an area of research we're really interested in. But we know we can correct the infant gut. We've done studies, as well as many others around the globe, by putting back those missing bifidobacteria. It's kind of 3 species we found in our research to be really critical for immune development. It's the Bifidobacterium infantis, Bifidobacterium longum, and Bifidobacterium breve. They're kind of this trifecta of Bifidobacterium where they do thrive in breast milk, but they also, as the child gets solid food and starts to wean, are really good at consuming plant-based fibers. And those are the microbes that we really need for the rest of our lives.
In other words, they consume the plant-based fibers, which helps them grow. That's like food for them in the gut.
Food for them, exactly. Right. And when we think about diet, and that's the other thing that parents can do, not only restoring back what's really important for that key foundation, and as early as possible, our research is showing. Can you do it in the hospital or when they come home? The earlier, the better, essentially. And for a long duration, you want to keep those microbes there. Unfortunately, upwards of 80% of children in the United States by the age of 2 get antibiotics. Right. Antibiotics from a microbiome, while they're medically necessary in many cases, they are quite detrimental to the child gut microbiome because it's developing. It doesn't have the diversity that yours and mine has. They don't. And so it ends up having much more of an impact on the growth of the gut long term. So, what can parents do is, again, putting back those missing microbes, but then in their diet, try to expose them as much as, and I understand toddlers. I understand how hard it is, but expose them to a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and really think about the fiber and potentially even fermented foods like kefirs and other yogurts.
Yeah. And thinking about stuff like, and this goes to the nutritional aspect of my practice and talking to people about how, don't give them juice, give them the orange, right? Like you have to give them the fiber, not just the juice. That's just the fructose and is basically after you get a half a cup of that, you've gotten enough nutrition, and some kids drink juice all day long. Again, this is not a judgment on anyone. This is a cultural aspect of child rearing in our country that we have to shift because something's going on. We have to shift something. There's too many sick kids, too many sick people. I've never seen or heard of so much chronic disease and illness in children, which is really, really sad. Obesity and obesity leading to illness, not just about, body size. It's about health. And so another thing that came up for me I always like to reflect back to my family experience. In our family, most of us are dairy intolerant, right? So, which is related to gut bacteria, right?
Yep.
So my daughter-in-law was raised in the countryside of Dominican Republic, and she had no problem during her pregnancy with dairy, and her baby is fine with dairy. And I only thought of that today when I was thinking, here she was not exposed to the things we were exposed to until she was 15 years old. So she must have a great basis of foundation in her gut, even though she wasn't breastfed that much and whatever, but still she was playing out in the dirt. She was eating real food. There was nothing processed in her life until she came here, So in other countries or less civilized places, there is less chronic disease. There's less jaw problem development. There's less tongue tie, all the things because we're chewing and swallowing and eating real food, not mush, right? All day long. Processed mush. Anyway, so replacing, full disclosure, Stephanie, you are the CEO of a company that makes a product that replaces this. Let's talk. We can talk a little bit about that because I think that's exciting. There's a couple of different companies now that make it, but you have one of them, right? Let's talk about how easy it is, or is it easy to get probiotics into an infant?
I think it's pretty easy to get probiotics into an infant. Again, their microbiome is very malleable. They start with just a few kinds of bacteria, but it should be bifidobacterium from the start. And so they're very accepting. But one of the key important things for the right bacteria to thrive is either being breastfed or to be supplemented with human milk oligosaccharides, which are the powerful prebiotics in breast milk that really don't feed the child. They feed the gut bacteria. The third major largest component in breast milk are these special prebiotics. Again, for the gut, not necessarily for the child, or I guess indirectly. And using the research from our My Baby Biome study, we found that babies in the U.S. are missing 3 key species of bacteria. And in our lab here in San Diego, we isolated many strains of those key species from the infant poop that we gathered. That's how we look at the microbiome, is through poop. So lots of dirty diapers. And what we found from those strains was that there's only a few kinds of those strains in modern babies today. Many of the probiotics that may be at the grocery store, those strains do not naturally exist in us anymore.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of evolution that happens in the human gut. And so we are basically putting back the modern strains that are missing from these babies. And we've created a product that is a powder and for infants and toddlers that contains both the missing probiotic strains that we discovered, again, from modern babies, but with the right prebiotics from breast milk. And we've clinically validated this in the largest study ever in babies and toddlers in the US to look at pre and probiotics, and found that they can take hold in the infant gut within a matter of weeks and grow to the levels that are really helpful for
That's what I was going to
immune
ask
system
you.
development.
I've heard skeptics say, for all supplements, you're just either peeing them or pooping them out. Like, how do we know they're working?
Yeah.
And that was going to be my question. You do have evidence of these taking root literally and growing, but it takes a few weeks.
It does. I mean, it happens, again, for an infant, it happens very quickly. Within 7 days, we actually see it there in the gut. We take multiple poop samples during the study and analyze it. And by the end of 1 month, you see quite a bit. In fact, the whole ecosystem shifts. A child may have had a lot of potential bad actors like E. coli and other species that we really don't want infants to have. We see that very significantly reduced. And in fact, we have a publication coming out in a well-known pediatric journal talking more about this.
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. Getting pediatricians on board. Have you found that to be a challenge?
It's going quite well. We have over 500 pediatricians nationwide in our sampling program recommending it. Pediatricians we've had a lot of inbound interest. In fact, we have over 200 on a wait list right now to be in our program. And it's really the research. They want research-backed products. And we've not only done the biggest studies in the US, but, we are pioneering how to put this back. And we're also interested, our next clinical trials, we actually want to take them further into the clinic and potentially explore, can we prevent food allergies or reduce eczema with this type of product?
That's really important. And I have a question about if someone is buying, of course, your products, you back your product, but what are the properties of a good probiotic? Some probiotics need to be refrigerated. Some, need, like, how do families know how to discern? Is it the particular strain, the numbers of strains?
These are all things the field is learning. I have been, we started out the company, my career started out with microbiome therapeutics, not even thinking about consumer products. I wanted to come in and fix a lot of the issues in the consumer probiotic industry. I think and me as a parent and as a consumer, I don't know what I can trust. All I can trust is something that might have been clinically validated, and I can review the clinical results, to be honest. So many products that are on the market may not even be viable. They may not have the right prebiotics or no prebiotics, or may not even be the right strain that's on the label. So I think it's really difficult to know what to trust. But the only thing that even physicians and I think parents and consumers should consider are, has it been clinically validated? What were the results? What's their track record? I think that's the only thing we can go off of, and to understand if it can really do anything.
Right. Yeah. I hear that. So the other question I have, and I get this from parents all the time, because if I see a patient and I give them supplement recommendations, I'll always put a probiotic, especially if they've had a C-section or they had antibiotics, right? That American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation is if there is a C-section or antibiotics during labor, pregnancy, labor, or birth, there should be a probiotic for the infant. And on all the labels, it says 6 months or 3 months and up or whatever. Like, so I don't know, is the labeling on your product different than that? Or
so we have kind of two types, 0 to 12 months and 12 to 36 months plus. I take the toddler version myself. It's really based, and they're only different by the amount of the probiotic in the product. That is, for us, I can't talk about the other companies. I don't know what research they've done. It's from our extensive mapping of the microbiome. In our My Baby Biome Study is a 7-year study. The kids are now turning 4, which is really exciting. And we're going to get that information on that time point. But we are trying to develop products that work across that full journey, but understanding the changes in the microbiome that are happening.
That's fascinating. That now that you can see them at age 4 and see how their health
it's incredible. Are going. And it really does demonstrate the importance of getting it right as early as possible, because we're looking at each child in their trajectory of development. And for many that were started out with an unhealthier microbiome, lack of bifidobacterium, they stay on that trajectory. It's actually very difficult. I mean, their parents don't know that they're on that trajectory, right? Maybe there are some signs, but that's not the clear thing that they can see. So it is very important to do something about that early on if they can.
My rote answer to that is, if you read any packaging, everybody's always afraid to give to a pregnant or newborn, right? Like that's almost like just a disclaimer, but there could be no harm to something that has been tested on a newborn. Could there?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we do the clinical studies. And so much so, these have been demonstrated. So our clinical study was to demonstrate safety and tolerability, but we're going beyond that. We are actually would like to have our ingredients approved by the FDA to be incorporated into infant formula, which is the highest standard in the US for these types of products. And so we've submitted that paperwork, but it needs to be tested on that population. And generally, something that comes from us, like in the microbiome, with a very good historical safety profile is fine. Again, babies, this is Mother Nature. We are intended to have them. They're just missing now.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, and I don't have the caution, but I'm like things that I know that parents may be asking. That's why
absolutely.
I wanted to clarify that.
Again, that's where the clinical studies are so important to demonstrate that. Yes.
Yeah. And getting to putting that in formula, would that be shelf stable in formula? Would that have to be like a powdered formula, or would it work in the liquid?
Well,
I'm just, you may not know. These things that are turning in my mind.
These are all great formulation questions. Our product is a powder, and so those are, and some are, a lot of formulas powder. So, this is something that can be added later on with other powdered ingredients, for example.
Yeah, I worry because I think that's every baby who has formula should be getting this, but then I worry about infant formula manufacturing using using it just as marketing and not having it really be effective. So that's where my red flags go up when I hear that.
Absolutely. And I think that's why the product today is a standalone product. But we want to demonstrate, the highest safety in the US. But also, this is a powerful ingredient that could help babies who are consuming formula. Right.
Oh, it's so fascinating. And I hope I'm not is this the hardest interview you've ever had?
Oh, no. I deal with investors all day. Okay.
Usually I'm much softer in my questions, more conversational, but I'm like, my wheels are turning and I'm thinking of all the aspects.
No. So you'd be surprised what investors ask these days.
I could only imagine, and they don't have the understanding of the science, right?
That's the problem.
Yeah,
they're very quick to judge.
Yeah. In a perfect world, how do we get this microbiome changing? Say mom has bifido, she's good, right? She's good. She's healthy. Her microbiome is decent, right? And she goes to have a baby. I know the answer to this, but let's spell it out. How do we make sure or optimize the baby getting that from mom as much as we can?
I mean, I think it's really the breast milk. And the breast milk prebiotics are what these bacteria need to grow. Right. Because even if mom had a little amount and it gets passed on, that's the hard part too. It's great if mom has it, but mom still's got to pass it somehow.
Right. What about vaginal birth? What about vaginal
birth? Yeah. So what we're finding from vaginal birth is that the child is not only seeded by microbes in the birth canal and vaginal microbiome, but also the gut microbiome of the mom. That's actually what's seeding them, is a little bit of poop.
Right. And everybody's afraid they're going to poop in labor, but it's actually biologically important, right?
Yeah, it's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
There's some exposure.
Yeah. And when I first started, I was a labor and delivery nurse for many years before I became a midwife. And way back when I first started, we used to put betadine on the perineum. We used to clean it, shave, sorry ladies, and then pour betadine before the baby was allowed to have access to the skin. So we were killing all of the good bacteria that were there, right? It's crazy. And then the baby was taken right away to strangers' gloved hands, no touching the mom's skin until they were cleaned off, which they might even have some good bacteria floating around them, right? I have PTSD from the things I did to infants before I knew, or before I even had a choice of what we were doing. Let's put it that way.
But I think that's what's great about this modern science, is that we're now understanding how important the microbiome everywhere, inside and outside of us are, and how it can impact our little ones. And my daughter has 2 little ones, and they go to outdoor, what they call mud class. It's like a forest. Oh, that's great. I love that.
And they have T-shirts that say, "A little dirt never hurt."
Yeah.
And
I love it.
We were brought up differently. We were brought up thinking everything's got to be sterilized. I don't know why I've always had an aversion to hand sanitizer. Like, not that we shouldn't ever use it, but like the moms who you touch something, let's sanitize you. You touch that, let's sanitize you. Because we're killing the good stuff, we're killing the good stuff. And we need that. We shouldn't be afraid of.
We should embrace. We should let them play in the dirt as much as possible. Maybe even sample some.
Well, a toddler's going to sample some no matter what we do, right?
No matter what, yes.
So, this is so fascinating, and I'm so grateful for you and people like you who have the brains and the capacity and the mission to fix these things for us, to learn about them, to give us real evidence, because I practice in a field where the evidence is just coming up now. We don't have the evidence that we need for tongue tie. We have more than people give us claim to, but we don't have enough of it for, like you were saying, how the pediatricians love your stuff. We don't get that necessarily, right? Yeah. So I respect the level of research that is gone behind this project, and it just makes so much sense to me. It just feels right, if that makes if that makes sense. So I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so grateful that you reached out and that we had this time together. Let's talk about how people can reach you, find out about the study. I will link it in the show notes.
Great.
Sure. But tell me how we can, people can reach you if they're driving while they're listening.
Appreciate it. So our website, where you can find the product and more on the research and about the team of scientists behind it, is persephone.bio. You can also find us on socials at persephone.bio as well.
Excellent. I will definitely link that in the show notes. And thank you again, Stephanie, for spending this time with us. And thank you to everybody for listening and for appreciating this little break where we didn't talk anything about tongue tie, but we spoke about something that is just as important in child development for us all to recognize and keep in the back of our mind as we go on with our professional roles or our parent roles. So thanks, everybody. Tune in soon. This podcast is meant for education and conversation only. It is not medical advice and does not replace formal education, professional training, or individualized care from a qualified healthcare provider. Always seek appropriate guidance for individual concerns. The views and opinions shared by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the host or tongue tie experts. Many professionals were never taught how to fully assess tongue tie, and families are often left trying to reach their breastfeeding goals without the support they actually need. If feeding feels harder than it should, I don't want you to be alone. I wrote Tongue Tie for Parents to help you understand what's happening and how to move forward with a clear, thoughtful approach. It's the same guidance I would give you if you were sitting with me in my office. It takes a holistic, functional view, guiding you through what to look for, how to think about next steps, and what actually helps. Available now on Amazon. Link is in the show notes.